You guys know the movie, The Incredibles, don't you? It's there's this big guy that's working at an insurance company, and it's really not him. He knows he's a superhero down deep. But so he keeps doodling these pictures, he's making uniforms, and all of them have capes, remember? And then who does he meet? He goes to the person that's going to make the uniform for him. Who's that gal? She's about 4 foot nothing tall. Yes, Edna. Edna's the person. And remember what she keeps saying to him? She keeps saying this: no capes. That's her message to him over and over again, just no capes. I wanted to do what you want to do, which is to make a difference. And a lot of the organizations that I went to say, hey, can I go do what you're doing? They all said no. They said I could send you money, but in terms of actually getting some skin in the game, I keep getting a bunch of no's. And I just started thinking to myself, maybe we could do something, not based on status or position or title, but because, as Michael was saying, because of our heart. Maybe we could do it without spin too. No bracelets, no mission statements, no nothing. If you want a mission statement, I think this would be it. I'd write on my undershirt, be awesome. That would be the mission statement. I wouldn't make a hoodie out of it. I think I'd say, just go be awesome. Because every single outfit that I went to, and they're amazing outfits, that's why I went to them. And I'd say, hey, listen, I own a law firm. I've got a bunch of smart people. We'll do all your stuff for nothing. And they all said no. I'm like, are you kidding me? All work for nothing. So it wasn't like they couldn't afford me. So have you guys run into that? So here's what I thought. I thought of this model that Jesus had. Remember, he cured a couple people, and he said, tell no one. There's a little girl he raised from the dead, and he says, tell no one. 2 guys get leprosy, and he does his Jedi, whatever that is. They don't have it anymore, and he's got one instruction for them: tell no one. And I love that. That's where this idea of being secretly incredible comes from. This idea that we could be just ordinary folks with all of our flaws, all of our screw-ups, all the stuff that makes us us, but we don't need an organization and a hoodie to do it. We could just be us. And they could stream out of a series of inexplicable no's. Because it'd be inexplicable. One of these outfits was spending $800,000 a year on lawyers. Said, you can have all mine for nothing. And inexplicably, they said no. Now, I don't hear God's audible voice. I don't see cloud formations that look like Jesus or John the Baptist. But I think God instead speaks to me through people like you. I think that sometimes, when something pings you, like you hear a heart surgeon, even something like laughing. I didn't know my heart started beating after 20 days. Those kinds of things make me think it's not about status or title. It's about this thing that's going on inside. And to prove it, we did this. When my kids were 7, 9, and 11, that's when the plane hit the building. We don't have a television in the house because I want the kids to hear from Dad. If the president gets a girlfriend or if a plane hits a building, I want them to hear from me. So we have a table in our living room, and I sat down and I said, hey kids, this horrible thing happened. What would you do if you had 5 minutes in front of a world leader? And to make sense out of your faith, your hopes, what you're looking forward to in the future. And I did that dorky dad thing. I made him write it down. So Adam was the first to go, and he was 7. And he said, if I had 5 minutes in front of a world leader, I'd ask him over for a sleepover. And that's because we'd be big buddies afterwards. You know what it's like when you're a kid and you have a sleepover. So he wrote that down. And Richard said, I would ask him this: what is your hope in? I thought that was pretty poignant for a 9-year-old. Because if I found out what they were hoping in, maybe I was hoping for the same thing. Lindsay was our precocious one, and she said, I'd get all this camera gear you got here. I would take my little camera, and I'd say, if you can't come over for an interview, or rather for a sleepover with us, can we come over to your house and interview you and ask you what your hope is in? And then we'll pass that message of hope on to another leader. Does that sound like a great idea from an 11-year-old? Awesome. So game on. We downloaded the CIA website. You can do that. I felt like I was hacking into NORAD. You could get the names of every leader in the whole world. And I made a deal with the kids. We'll send your letter to them, every single leader. And if you get one yes, I'll take you. So the kids wrote this letter, said, dear Gaddafi, we're Lindsay, Richard, and Adam Goff, and we live in San Diego, and we'd like to know if you'd like to come over for a sleepover. And if you can't make it, could we come over to your house and ask you what your hope is in? So we sent all these letters, and I got a post office box because I didn't want Gaddafi to know where I lived. So every day after school, we got all these letters back, and they all said the same thing. It would be like from Tony Blair. It would say, jolly good show, like forget it, but jolly good show. We got them from all these countries, and some of them, I didn't even know where the country was. I just said, they'd say like, Dad, where's this? I goes like, east. But one day, I heard all the squealing from the back seat of the car, and they got a letter from the leader of Bulgaria. And he said, kids, if you'll come to the palace, I'll give you your interview. And they were like, ah! And then the prime minister of Switzerland said, kids, if you'll come to Bern, I'll give you your interview. And then the president of Israel said, kids, if you'll come to Jerusalem. We got 29 yeses. Do you believe that? So we like pull the kids out of school. Their teachers had a cow. I'm like, sue me. So away we went. But the whole idea isn't prompted by status and kind of like that thing Jesus was saying to people. Just be secretly incredible. It's like what's happening in your heart. It's what you just heard from this fantastic doctor before. And it isn't driven. Now, I'm speaking to a group, a room, and 2 rooms down below full of really able people. But it's not what you're able to do, because you guys are able to do tons. If I said, let's make a rocket ship, 3 people would raise their hands and say, I just have the parts on me. But here's the deal. I want to find, and don't you, what we were made to do. And if you operate under the handicap I operate with, which is I don't hear God's audible voice, so I say instead, what pings me? What lights me up? So on one of these trips, we ended up in Uganda. And I started thinking, shoot, I'm a lawyer. Maybe we could help out with these justice issues. The average age for the country was 14 and a half years old. Can you believe that? 14 and a half years, it's a nation of children. So we went to the jails, and we found these young men and women that would be put in jail, and 4 years later, they'd still be sitting in jail, never having stepped foot in a court. If I don't want your son to hang out with my daughter, I just accuse him of defilement, and he goes to jail that day. 4 years later, he's still sitting there. So I asked some judges who were then friends, I said, why don't we try some of these cases? So they said, okay. So I bought the entire Ugandan law library, both books, and we just started trying cases. That's that idea that it's not driven by status or position or title. It isn't because you were cool enough to join the right organizations, because all the right organizations that are that cool are too smart to have me. And maybe they're too smart to have you. But maybe what we do instead, that idea of, like, take it from Edna, no capes. What if we just do secretly incredible stuff? So we tried these cases against kids, and we've tried about 250 cases in total, but 80 of these were involved with kids sitting in jail for 2, 3, 4 years at a time. And out of those 80 cases, we dropped 79 kids off at home, all charges resolved. Doesn't that sound like the kind of thing, I don't want to make a wristband out of that. I just want to go do awesome stuff. Don't you want to, like, be awesome? That's our mission statement, isn't it? And if we all decided to do that, we could make rocket ships. We could do all this really unlikely stuff. There's this horrible practice in Uganda of child sacrifice. It's not given a lot of attention, but it's just a horrible thing. There's many witch doctors. And up until a few years ago, there was no law outlawing trafficking in people or trafficking in body parts. We started going into these jail cells, finding kids, not only the ones that had been accused of crimes, but also finding the perpetrators and saying, who are these bad guys that are taking body parts from kids? And there were always a victim, but the problem is the victim was always left for dead. So we had nothing to do. And then there was also an intimidation factor by the judges. They didn't want to try a case against a powerful witch doctor because of some consequences to them. But we found a scrappy judge, and we said, let's go try this case. Let's roll out this law that's been on the books for 3 or 4 years, but never has been tried, involving the trafficking of body parts and prohibiting it. So we found this little boy. His name was, we'll just call him Charlie. Charlie had been abducted. He was 8 years old. He had these parts cut off of him and was left for dead by a witch doctor named Kabi. We tried that case. I'm sitting in a hut across from the courthouse with all my stuff piled up against the door, and the judge has 3 guys with machine guns around his house, because there was a lot of, like, when you start doing stuff without capes individually, then there was just a lot of stuff that you set in motion. But that judge tried the case, and the conviction came back. the first conviction in East Africa, and it wasn't about an organization. It wasn't about status or title. It was about a secretly incredible kid. And I think, while I don't see God's face in bushes and cloud formations, while I don't hear an audible voice, I think someday God's going to touch us on the nose. He's going to say, you were secretly incredible with what you did. And it won't be because of us. It'll be because of kids like Charlie. It'll be like no-name kids from San Diego that say audaciously to leaders, what we want to do is not meet with you to advance an agenda or tell you stop doing this or do more of that. Instead, what if we do this novel concept of just being friends? But not the bastardized version of friendship, which is networking. Let's just be friends because we're friends. There's nothing on the other side of the equal sign. And I think that's what we have a room full of. It's just a bunch of people that want to say, yes, let's go be secretly incredible. And I applaud you for that. Thank you very much. God bless you guys.